Like if you're not on the property, you can't, that's what you're saying?
Yeah, or, you know, somebody said, like, I'm temporarily living in Kingston to send my kid to school there, and I'm driving back and forth every day to here. So I don't live on my property, but I'm back and forth every day. I'm in Ulster County.
Got a special use permit?
You know? No, I don't.
There we go.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people who have art galleries and construction companies don't have special use permits either. So,
I don't know about that.
you know, Howie, would you say a lot of everybody business that runs a home-based business has got a special use permit?
I have a
I
special
don't
use
keep a
permit.
record of those kinds of statistics, but the majority of people who come into my office are looking to put a deck on, a porch on, you know, change the windows in their house. But what I can see, the trend is in the building industry where people are building or renovating big houses, they're leaning towards the Airbnb market. That's their focus, that's where they want to go.
In order to make it possible for them to do it.
They didn't say that.
But
So let me ask
also,
a question.
well, wait a second, you're going to do a lot of talking. I'm also seeing in this town a trend towards some of the old resorts coming back. The Shandaken Inn, the Alpine, those kinds of things. There's people talking about bringing in modular homes, modular self-contained four-season modular homes to put on sites, and so there's a trend towards that direction. It's happening from both the long term and the short term. But you know, I think what we really need to do is get back to the legality, and I think the first thing we have to establish is what is an STR. It doesn't fit. There's no STR in our zoning book. So
Didn't exist.
It didn't exist, right? But well, I mean, I keep bringing up bed and breakfast, well, Airbnb, bed and breakfast. But the short-term renters don't want to be put in that category because they say they don't, you know, provide food. Okay, so where do we go to? Boarding house? Well, a boarding house is for non-transients, people who generally stay there for a long time. Hotel, that can be either way, transient or non-transient. But to get back to the legal position of it, we have definition of what is residential and what is commercial. And hotel, bed and breakfast, boarding house, they all come under commercial uses. So when we start talking about STR in residential districts, we have to come up with a different definition if we're going to allow it in residential districts.
There are numerous definitions throughout the literature. You know, I mean, San Francisco's already defined it, New Orleans defined it, Lisbon, Spain has defined it.
But here in
But
Shandaken,
we
we're on the
don't have it,
specific.
right.
We don't have anything specific.
So can I ask how you're more expert than I am. So if something is not mentioned in the zoning, what's the approach? If it's not allowed, that means it's not permitted, or if it's not allowed, you can do what you want? If it's not illegal, immoral, or fattening?
Not allowed or not?
Well,
If it's not prohibited?
okay,
If it's
in our
not
use
prohibited.
use regulations, any use not listed specifically or through a similar use as such may be deemed by the ZBA as permitted.
Is what permitted?
As permitted. So they have to make, I can send an applicant to the ZBA, and the ZBA makes a determination. Well, is it a bed and breakfast? Is it a motel? Is it a B&B? Is it a?
So they can do an ad hoc determination?
They
We're gonna do that for all 138
Yeah.
people in our monthly 2-hour meetings, right?
Mhm.
So, it's not gonna happen. So how do we go about establishing the legality? And ultimately, is that a job for the planning board?
Ultimately, it's the town board that will decide that.
So should we formulate recommendations based on the work we've done so far about, first of all, defining short-term rentals,
Mhm.
and then secondly, suggesting a modification of the zoning laws? This sort of sounding like more and more.
And that can only be done by the town board.
Yeah, and that's,
Well,
I think you have to, because what Harry just read to us, anybody could then say, well, it's not in there, ZBA, you have to hear me out. And the
yeah.
planning board, we can't do anything about it.
So we have to define it before we can do it.
I think so, I think it'd be better for the town.
Yeah, we have to maybe that's our first step, is to make a suggestion of what exactly is it.
Okay.
If we do not have a clear definition of short-term rentals and a clear definition of our rights, we probably open ourselves up to so many lawsuits going forward.
Yeah. Mhm.
So just for reference, since we're close to Woodstock, I'll just read the way they describe it. Short-term rental STR, an accessory use allowing a short-term rental less than 30 days of at least one room in a private single-family or two-family home. Property owner is seeking to operate a shorterm rental must apply and receive from Town of Woodstock a short-term rental registration and post the Woodstock registration. So they're defining it within the size of the house and the amount of time that somebody is staying there, anybody. This also defines bed and breakfast as well in the law. So
And I think the amount of time is key, because above 30 days, you are.
I understand that.
It sounds
I
like.
understand. I'm just
So
reading.
I hate
Less
to
than
use like
30
mixed
days
apples
is
and
transient.
oranges.
I'm just reading.
I've looked at a lot of them.
Okay, so you're familiar with the vernacular and the way they're describing it? Okay, so I'm sorry I read it since we're
No, no,
already
no, no,
familiar.
no.
No, I like that.
Yeah.
I think we can use something like that.
Yeah, and this is past law at this point.
Yeah, and that's the tentative law before it, that's not the finished definition, but.
I mean, that definition goes beyond the definition, because it also includes a prescription of the process you have to follow. You can have a definition that just ends at the definition of what an STR is.
But now you're putting the horse again in front of the cart. I mean, the cart in front of the horse, because we were just saying that we wanted the town board to give us a definition of what STRs mean.
But we were
We're
going to go and tell
recommending a
them.
definition of the town board.
Yeah, well,
We have to offer them an interpretation.
we should do our due diligence and then.
And
Yeah.
get some public opinion on that, and then we can start.
Yeah,
You know.
because now we're trying to do the best we can, and everybody's got an opinion, and everybody's got a thought process on it, and all of them are good. It's just, where do we go if we don't know really what the zoning is?
We
So-
can't act on our opinions at this point.
Pardon?
We can't act on our opinions because we don't know what
Yes.
the zone is. Did everybody see the, couple of documents? Oh, this one, from host compliance. Rob sent this out early on. It includes a lot of information about like how to define. Host compliance, which
I'll
is.
have to go back to my emails.
Probably hostcompliance.org or something like that. But one of these organizations he referenced early on to try to help reduce
well,
search.
their goal, like an ad agency, is to make money. And they charge the town. Yeah, they put you on retainer and they charge a lot of fees. And overall, it's very, very still good to get short-term rental.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I just found it very helpful. in terms of the definition.
I think what's important is to realize that we're in Shandaken and we're not in Pasadena or San Francisco.
Nobody's suggesting we're out there or compound.
Or Woodstock.
Or Woodstock.
Or
apples and oranges.
Woodstock, yeah. I think we need to look at what the needs of our town is and see what works for us.
Well, what our zoning laws do define is what are residential uses and what are commercial uses. They clearly made the distinction, and that's a beginning. And the dilemma for us is that short-term rental is not defined in the commercial use, and it's definitely not defined in residential uses permitted.
So are we up to the task of creating a definition? How do we go about that?
You want to create a definition to do what?
Of short-term rentals to refer to the town board so that they may determine whether or not there has to be a change in the zoning laws to accommodate short-term rentals.
And if they
Is
say,
that correct? Is
if
that
they
correct?
say no.
Or to even prohibit. You should at
What-
least define the thing, right?
Okay, what if the town board says they do not want to do that? They don't want to change the zoning? zoning is fine the way it is.
Yeah.
Well,
But that's why we put it to
With
them.
rub all
so they
day, I
know.
guess.
We need to have a definition, we're not defining it pro or con, we need something to work off of so that we can know what we're talking about. So if the first step is having it on the books, then we need to put it to town board. Whether I don't see any reason why they wouldn't want it defined, especially considering this is a very important conversation in the town. If they decide to vote no, which who knows, maybe they will, then that happens. But in the meantime, we should at least put it forth, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Agreed.
That would be a good start.
So- So moving forward, is that, I mean, obviously, I think Howie would take the lead on a lot of the intricacies of writing the definition, right?
How many town board individuals do Airbnb?
One that I know.
STRs?
One that I know.
Who's that?
Am I allowed to, I don't know, I think
Yeah.
the council swarms, I don't know.
Oh,
I could be wrong about that too, sorry.
yeah.
But as far as I know, I don't know.
Okay. Well, can we be a necessary recusal? We're not at that point yet.
But yeah, and I also don't think there's any motivation for anyone to vote no, right? It's just a definition.
Well, if you define it, then you're gonna
So
rezone the zoning.
let me
I mean,
propose,
it's defined now.
Potentially down
We know
the line.
exactly what it means. We
There
know
are-
it means short-term rental.
There are commercial uses that are allowed in residential zones
Mm-hmm.
at the title of special use permit. And that would be up to
So I
our
think
planning
the
board.
current zoning actually,
Yeah, but the problem is that the STR people don't want to agree they're a bed and breakfast.
but they don't have to agree because it's the zoning is right in front of you. They don't have to agree whether they're running a bed and breakfast or a hotel or a motel. They're doing something in a residential area or zoning area that is defined here.
Mhm.
You know, they're running a hotel or a motel.
Yeah,
If
nobody-
you're renting rooms by the day, it's defined.
Nobody has to agree with the zoning laws, you just have to abide by them.
Yes, but it's obvious that nobody's been abiding by it. You know, they're just,
Well-
you're just buying a house and renting it out
Hank, the hotel is permitted in every district. in this
on the
town.
special
On the special
permit,
use
yeah.
permit.
So you can buy a house, then get a special use permit,
then
and then
go hotel.
operate legally.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So maybe the answer to all of this is not to change our zoning, because when you change your zoning, it's gonna be forever. Maybe to.
But then we have to determine that an STR is a bed and breakfast.
Well, maybe everybody that has an SDR should come in for a special use permit, because,
What it is.
yeah.
yeah, well, why
Why
can't
you gotta-
STR be an STR? And you write in the thing that if you agree that money is
Okay.
transacted.
I'm okay with that, let's do that.
So I'm gonna play off Sam's playbook here. Why don't we all, for next meeting, come with a definition of what an STR is, and we can take a look at the different versions of it, and then we can start to edit down on something, right? Makes sense?
Well, James, if we called it a bed and breakfast, right now,
It'd be,
it would be a legal thing to do to go and get a special use permit to get your B&B.
it's a very good point.
So maybe we don't have to change it.
Maybe we don't have to.
But to do that, you have to go to ZBA, as I understood,
Yeah, I do
because
too.
it's not a listed use.
And
And is that too cumbersome?
Yeah.
and it's
We could
also,
have all the short-term rental people get together and just flood you with applications.
We have two co-chair people who just lost. It's a five-man board, and we just lost our two co-chair people. So now it's a three-man board. So does anybody want to volunteer on the zoning board? No?
And you're having an interesting meeting coming up this month.
And then keep.
I love that article that you quoted.
Well,
We don't know.
I've got a question for the group. I think this legality issue is important, and I think it should be, we should have clarity. Agreed, okay. So I don't necessarily think that we should not look at moving forward on what type of registration and regulations and safety should be put in place for the SDR community.
No, we need a definition first. I thought we agreed.
Well, no, but I'm saying the definition is to go to the zoning board to clarify a legality. In the meantime, SDRs are operating. In the meantime, some neighbors feel that there's parties going on and there's bear nuisances and not parking, and other people feel the communities are being revitalized. So there's a need in the community for us to move forward on regulating and organizing STRs in the community. What's
No,
best for
we
them.
understand that. That's why we're here.
But I don't know that if you have this definition, and like he says, okay, we call them bed and breakfast and then it's legal, then only then can we go move forward on having a discussion about how we would,
No, but what if you look at the other side? What if the town just decides to shut them all down tomorrow? And say that you've got to come in, if you're in this particular zone, you got to come in for a special use permit.
There's a void in the legality that needs to be filled.
no, I don't, I'm not negating the fact that there's a void and that we've been going forward.
What's your point then?
But my point is, there's other things to talk about
Yeah, say we'll
safety
talk
and
about-
regulations
yeah, we have
only
a-
after that.
We have a whole file of stuff to talk about,
Yeah.
so. But
Okay.
do we all agree we need to establish a definition first?
Yeah.
Yes,
Sure.
because that's tied to the whole legality thing, and we all agree that that seems, there's a consensus that's too important to ignore.
I
agree.
So,
And, you know, I think we also had some other consensus, if I just, there seemed to be a pretty strong consensus that the community is an issue, and that, at least from what people wrote, it cuts both ways. There seemed to be enough pros and cons for the community that it would be wrong to paint STR with a broad brush as either absolutely bad or absolutely good. So I think there was a consensus on that. And I think there was a consensus on safety. Safety, quality of life, safety particularly was, no one really felt wrong about that. It should be safe, as you put it, not just to the community and neighbors, but to the people who are staying in the building. You know, things like having a working carbon monoxide detector or difference of life and death, that's important stuff. So safety, community, cutting both ways, those are things that seem to be pretty much a consensus that we came across tonight. I think we still have some, you know, the economic stuff. I think everybody seemed to recognize the consensus that there's an economic impact that probably is trending more to the good. But to Hank's point, how does everybody benefit?
Does everybody benefit?
How does the whole town benefit?
So I got a dumb question. So if I improve my property and my taxes go up and I pay property tax, that goes to the town, right? Some of the property tax goes to the town, right?
yeah.
So as the value of properties goes up, the town gets more property
If
tax.
they reassess.
Well,
If they
That's good.
reassess.
I'm
The
not.
point is that,
Well, they
if
do
you want to get into that,
They
yes,
do.
our community
When I
is
approve-
driving up the price of housing, driving them up. So if they drive them up to a point where, like, I see houses in Woodland Valley, little shacks selling for 500,000, 630,000, that I wouldn't give you 300 for, or 200. They're artificially driving up the price of these houses, and at some point, the town can say that, you know, the houses have been inflated so much, the property values, that we're gonna reassess, and then they reassess, and who does it hurt?
Okay,
It
so.
doesn't hurt the people that are renting, because they'll just increase the rents or whatever, and they'll be able to, you know, fill that void with that. But the people that live here all the time, you're gonna force them right out of this
Okay,
town,
let me
forcing
make-
the kids, the children out already.
Let me address your issue. I think we should get a real estate person to talk to us about the value of property here versus other neighboring towns, and if what you're saying is really accurate. Because you're making a claim that it's inordinate and a lot of people can't get, what was the phrase that you used? You know, if we keep Shandaken, the value of property is really, really low. We won't get much tax money, we won't be able to do what we want to do. If our real estate values are commensurate with community neighborhoods and what other towns are doing, what's happening in the Hudson Valley in general, I think it's sure a concern to people, but if my property increases in value, that's also a good thing, that cuts both ways. If my property is worth more, you know, I've been living here for 30 years, I want to, you know, pass it on to my kid, and all of a sudden my kid gets a property that's worth a lot more money. That
So if I
they can
may,
then
because
buy lower.
I think we went down a rabbit hole there a little bit, but with the tax bit, but I understand your point, that is, if the economic benefits to me as an individual cause me to reinvest in my property, that's a community benefit.
Yeah. And the community, the town gets more tax money, which is a very, very
The thing
specific.
Hank hears is a whole community-wide reval,
That's
right? And
my concern.
Yeah.
They just did it not long ago.
is there any chance in hell that's gonna happen, a community?
Could
reval?
happen.
We haven't had one in, what?
Just a couple of years ago, Heidi Clark did it.
A whole community revale?
The whole-
Is that true?
What was
Yeah,
Shandaken?
yeah.
Yeah.
Every
Went
time
around,
somebody
measured
comes
every
in
house,
for a
every
building
shed.
permit application,
They-
a copy
they-
is made, sent to the assessor's office.
And
No,
it's
but
an
they reassess
individual.
everything.
But that's a permitted improvement that they're doing. If it's maintenance and they're painting and putting stuff in, it
You
doesn't
don't
need
need
a
a
permit.
permit.
You wouldn't know that and it wouldn't trigger that.
No, but I mean, just
No,
not
but
so
there
many
was
years
a
ago,
revale.
they went around, they reevaluated the whole town. They
Yeah.
measured the houses, they looked in your windows to see if you had granite countertops. They measured your decks, your stoops, your sheds, and they reevaluated, the whole town based on that.
So
So
how
it's-
come I didn't get a decrease in taxes?
Well, with all the money that we're making on STRs, the taxes should go down.
Yeah. Okay.
The town's not making money on STRs.
Well, you guys are hoarding all the money, you're not giving them any.
What do you mean? You guys are, well,
So,
the town-
Hank, let me
These
ask you
poor
a
guys that have a
What
hotel
do you
paying
think,
taxes.
what do you think the margin is on an STR after you pay your
I have
expenses?
no idea, I don't know what you charge, what your properties are
I
like.
can tell you some of
And I
the,
don't know if you pay taxes or not.
yeah. Well, of course, every host pays taxes.
So,
Well, we're not-
let's get back to the
we're not-
legality
you-
thing,
you
because
guys-
we're just gonna keep going.
Yeah, yeah.
So what's our next step? If we want to have a definition made, the only recourse is to go to the ZBA and say, what is, what is an STR?
Didn't they do this with the comprehensive plan?
I don't know.
Oh, no, the
Didn't they do
the
something with the
Airbnb,
zoning?
the Airbnb was not on the
No,
radar.
was it?
I would recommend that we come up with a provisional definition, one that this committee can get behind,
Okay.
because otherwise we'll be waiting forever. And, we can let,
I don't know if we have the authority to do that.
well, we have to think about
We
making
make a
recommendations, and if we want to make a recommendation,
Recommendation,
we said,
yeah.
well, provisionally, we think we're recommending on something that we define as follows.
It's always better to give someone something,
To
when they have
react to.
something
Yeah,
to chew on,
absolutely.
Yeah.
than
And in terms of
blank
the ZBA,
slate.
this committee is better empowered to do that than the ZBA, as currently configured.
Well, that has to change.
Does anybody want to sign up for the ZBA?
Doesn't pay anything. No benefits.
But what?
You only have 3 members now?
We believe so, yes.
What are you doing?
Ralph resigned.
Well, we have a quorum, so we can still vote.
So is our homework to come up with a definition for next one?
I think so.
I would love to see circulated the one that you just read to us. Think
Yeah.
that go into the meeting notes
Sure.
and make it easier.
Yeah.
Or email us.
Yeah, just email it to me and I'll.
Something that I just don't like to use wood stuff.
Do you want me to just give it to you?
It's apples and oranges, we understand that.
I
It's
think there were a few
starting point.
things that are
think,
sensitive.
I don't like to duplicate what some other communities
He's
do.
not saying adopt Woodstock, he's saying use it as a.
Use it, yeah.
Starting
It's a
point.
guideline.
I think Olive and West Shirley and Shoki are all going through the same thing.
Yeah.
And they're looking for the definition.
And we know what we can do is, what, I can email Dennis Doyle and ask him, okay, what do you got at the county level?
Oh,
Dennis and
please.
Robert, I'll do that.
Yeah, Please.
That's a good idea.
And Dennis was very helpful. Dennis was the one that came here and talked.
Yep.
And he was very
Who were
helpful.
they?
Yeah, Dennis was.
He's a county representative. He came during the first iteration of the committee and he gave us a presentation.
Runs the planning
He's
department.
That's where he got the
economic
questions.
development.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He got the questions from the young lady, said she can't afford to live in town. She can't
No, that was
college.
Pat Ryan. That was the
No,
county
I-
executive you were talking
I
about.
think when Dennis Doyle was here, that came up as well.
Yeah, but it wasn't what
It
he's
wasn't
talking about.
safety
today.
net, no.
It wasn't her.
But yeah, that's a recurring point.
Is that Dennis presentation on video?
No, but, not Carrie, but the other one. Who's the guy from New Zealand? Someone was filming it. So,
I remember that.
yeah.
Somebody from.
Yeah, because that was a big thing at the time.
So either Ian or Carrie are. the only
I
two that
believe
know.
so, but I don't.
Ian? I don't think it's
I
Ian.
think
Well,
somebody
Carrie's
was filming it
also
himself.
involved. There was a PowerPoint, which we have to monitor, but I think it
Yeah, I think I've done.
But if Sam gets in contact with Dennis, I'm sure he.
Yeah,
he
I'll
would-
ask him,
He
and I'll
would give
share
us
that.
that.
Yeah.
that-
Give us a definition so that we can begin working from.
Does anybody have any, known anybody have any personal relationships with anybody on these other town boards or committees that are doing this? From
Sorry,
our,
would anybody what?
does anybody know anybody else on any, that's somebody who's going through the same process in Olive or any of these other communities that we could reach out to and see where they're at on this and see if they.
I've read some articles on that. I mean, I know people that live in Olive, and I know that Jim Sofranco is running for town supervisor.
Yeah.
He might have an opinion. You know Jim?
Yeah, not that well, I could probably call them up. But he's not supervisor yet.
No, he's running for supervisor.
Yeah, so why don't we call,
Who's the supervisor?
what is, let's write, well, I'm just saying, anybody that can reach out to anybody else who's going through this
Yeah,
process.
I'll do some
And
research and find.
My understanding,
what
all
the
these,
towns do.
all these communities are going through this process,
Well,
not just
all over the
us.
United States. I mean,
Yeah.
it started in Europe and now it's
Yeah,
trickled down to the US.
Yeah.
So Airbnb or Airbnb, actually, that's some company. I mean, they don't own the properties and all they have is
Yeah.
computers. And they became his reservations, reservation center and reception desk.
Well,
Yeah.
what is
Sorry,
it?
is that-
they're virtual reception desk and reservation center. I just heard on the radio driving over here that Airbnb is planning to make a public offering in 2020.
Yeah.
$30 billion business right now.
Wow, so their public offering would be 50 billion. Somebody's getting rich. Is that you?
Yeah, really.
We're not owning anything.
Can I borrow $1 for gas on to get home?
No, I'll give you a ride home, but.
Airbnb is getting very rich over little sleepy towns like ours.
Who's Airbnb?
Airbnb.
Oh, did you call it Airbnb? It's not a very nice word, but.
Like community, take over a community. And there's also the fair playing field for individuals that are in this town that own hotels, motels, and bed and breakfasts that
It's not-
also have to adhere to all the health department regulations, the water testing.
Well, that's why I think we all agree that safety, we all agree that safety is an issue. I don't hear anybody here who said safety is not an issue.
All right, so our next meeting is October 28th. Can everybody show up with